If we're meeting for the first time, my name's Ken Edmonds, and on this channel I share information for individuals that are undertrained or untrained managers, or individuals that want to learn the skills they need to succeed in management. Today's video is titled, "What does it mean to sharpen your saw and why you need to do so?" And you're probably thinking, Ken, why are we talking about sharpening a saw? I'm not in the wood cutting business. Hopefully by the end of the video you'll understand what I meant and you'll see the benefit of it. We'll start by telling a story. And this story is really the embodiment of a principle that we're going to talk about. And what happened was years ago, when people still used manual saws in forestry, and there was a young woodcutter, and he was pretty proud of himself. He was a big buff guy, and he was really good at using a saw. And he went into a new logging camp. He was looking for a job, and he went up to the foreman and said, "Who cuts the most wood in your camp?" And the foreman thought for a minute, and he said, "That older gentleman over there. He cuts more wood every time than anybody else. He's my best cutter." And the young guy said, "If I can cut more wood than he does, can I have his job?" And the foreman said, "Sure. If you can cut more wood than he does, you've earned his job." And so they set up a contest. Both gentlemen would go into the forest and would start to cut in an area that had pretty similar trees. And at the end of the day, people would go out and look and see who had cut the most wood, and they'd declare a winner. So both gentlemen, the older gentleman and the young guy, went out into the woods. And the young guy started cutting away and cutting away. And you could hear the old gentleman, he was cutting away and cutting away. And then all of a sudden the old gentleman stopped. And the young guy thought, "Man, I've got this made." And he just started sawing harder. Pretty soon the older gentleman started sawing again. You could hear the saw in the distance. And that pattern repeated several times during the day. So at the end of the day, the whistle blew, and the observers went out and looked at the amount of wood cut. And it was clear that the older gentleman had cut more wood than the younger gentleman. And the younger gentleman was kind of despondent because he'd worked hard all day. He'd really been working hard. And so he walked up to the older gentleman. He said, "Listen, I heard you taking breaks several times during the day. I didn't take a break at all, and yet you cut more wood than I did. How is that possible?" And the older gentleman looked at the younger guy and he said, "Sonny," he says, "I wasn't taking a break. I was sharpening my saw." And so you get the sense of it is that what we're talking about when we talk about sharpening a saw is improving our skills and our ability to accomplish things. And then there's several factors that get wrapped up into sharpening our saw. And I'm going to talk about a few of them. This is far and away not all. You can get a good description of that in the book. And in fact, I kind of borrowed a similar story from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He's got a whole chapter on sharpening your saw. But some of the things we'll talk about today it starts with getting enough rest and relaxation. Sometimes especially if we're entrepreneurs, our business starts to consume us. And we don't realize it, but we start to lose effectiveness because we're working all day, every day on our business. I know when my wife and I had our copier dealership, it was the first thing we talked about in the morning, the last thing we talked about at night. It was nonstop. So we need to be able to buy out time to recharge our batteries, so to speak. So that's a piece of it. A second form of sharpening your saw is improving your mental skills. And what research shows is that highly successful people tend to read books. And it's not the latest novel that they're reading, but they're reading books about business and about leadership and different things that they may have observed that their skills aren't where they could be. And so they're constantly in that way working on sharpening their saw, getting better. I'm going to put some links of books that I've found helpful in sharpening my saw in the description down below. We'll talk about one of them in a little bit. A third piece of sharpening your saw is to keep your body in physical shape. You know, I sometimes tell my wife round is a shape. Regular physical exercise is good for our body. It's good for our brain. When we exercise and exercise vigorously, what we start to do is we start to improve the blood flow to the brain, and it helps in our thinking ability. A fourth tool that I'd recommend is buying out time to sit quietly and think, meditate, do some planning for the day. Again, and these are things that when we get really busy, we may fail to do. But I have found that by doing these things, I start to be more productive. I get more done. I can think more clearly. So when we're thinking about sharpening the saw, a good place to start is think about us. What is it that we could get better at? You can say we could look in the mirror and see, what is it that I'm not as good at as I could be? And then find a book that talks about that. You know, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's watching YouTube videos about business. There's a variety of ways to take in information that will help us sharpen our saw. Just pick the one that you find easiest. When we think of somebody that's trying to build up their body and improve their physical condition, they don't focus on just one muscle. They don't just do like this, trying to build this muscle. Instead, people that are effective exercise and build up all of their muscles. When you're looking at things to read and to study, broaden your horizon a little bit. Because sometimes things that are not directly related to your business or even directly related to business can be helpful. For those that are really serious, what we find is a lot of times you'll see people that have their own personal trainer. Now, there are people that go to the gym and they work out and they get some results, but the people that get a lot of results a lot of times have a personal trainer. So you might want to look for a coach or a mentor, somebody that can help you in the journey you're engaged in. And one process that I found that helped me, and it's described in a book by a gentleman named Hal Elrod, and there's a link to his book down below, but it has to do with combining several of the things I talked about into your morning routine. And in fact, it achieved results for him that he called it the Miracle Morning Process. And the title of his book is The Miracle Morning, the Not So Obvious Secret Guaranteed to Transform Your Life Before 8 a.m. And it's something that I recommend. It's something that I found very helpful. You may find it enjoyable. But whatever it is that you do, find a way to sharpen your saw so that you can win the race. If you enjoyed watching this video, do me a favor, hit the like and the subscribe. A new video every week, and we'll see you next week.